guys, welcome to this interview. I've got somebody very interesting on today who's going to give us some real nuggets. I'm going to ask him some honest, some straight questions, and I know I'll get some honest answers. So this is a local estate agent, been in doing this for how long, Martin?
14 years.
14 years, so we're going to get some great bits of information. So tell us, without stealing your thunder, the journey, when you got into this, what's the...
The timing wasn't great, if I'm honest. We basically had a big mortgage company, and we were providing the mortgage advice to several estate agents, excuse me, one of them being Stag and Redcar. The owner was an old friend of mine from Broughton up the way, and he basically had enough. And it was around about 2006, and the market was pretty much booming. And he moved from estate agents, and we took ownership in February 2006, and had a cracking year. And then of course the whole credit crunch broke.
Yeah, I know it well. I bought in that same year.
I mean, I felt bad, but not as bad as the guy that sold the agency, because he took a pub on, and that obviously plummeted as well. So from there it was tough times. It was really tough. The thing that saved us, without a doubt, was the rental market, apart from obviously good family and good people around you. But we literally, as the Northern Rock story broke, that's what I remember of the credit crunch, the start of it. I put the news on and looked at it and thought, oh, that's strange, you know, a big bank going in essence belly up. never thought it would get as bad as it did.
Yeah.
And we literally, at that time, we had, I think, 3 rentals on the books. It was just something we'd sort of fallen into by default. It wasn't a massive thing then. Excuse me. And from there, there was a mass exodus. You'll know yourself that the repossessions were coming through thick and fast.
Yeah.
And we suddenly found that there was a massive demand for rents. And that's what saved us. Because we didn't sell a house for months and months. The mortgage market just died overnight. So they couldn't really cut us off any harder. But as you know yourself, the rental market just suddenly exploded.
So what was that? Because it's funny you say that, because within this, in our local area where we're from, Redcar, I only ever remember one person that used to do lettings, and none of the other agents seem to do that. So did they just have the monopoly on it, or was the demand not as big back then as something?
I don't know. I think it was more to do with, like, you know, a traditional estate agent. You know, what does a traditional estate agent do? It sells houses, and there. I mean, you know, when I was sort of like younger, when I was doing the mortgages, I was a mortgage advisor prior to this for a good 15 years, an IFA. The rental market, from memory, just didn't see. I'm sure it did exist, but it didn't seem like it existed.
Yeah.
You know, people didn't rent houses. I remember a local businessman who was very, very successful, and he had a few. And he was saying to me, you know, back in the day, you know, you've got a young couple that want to set out on their own, and the way he got into the rentals was he'd find these young couples, and they would rent very, very cheaply, and they'd squirrel the deposit away, then they'd go and buy a house. And I think that was the rental market, you know, back in the day.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's gone the other way around, because anybody that is renting, you know, more often than not, they just can't save, because the rents, as you know, Steve, the rents are absolutely through the roof. And there is, you know, we saw a big shift, probably about 10 years ago, where you would get like your stereotypical homeowners, coming in and post credit crunch, you know, anybody that missed a mobile phone payment, don't want to touch it.
Yeah.
And I remember clearly one day there was a lovely couple came in. He was a firefighter, ex-forces, now firefighter. She was assistant bank manager, and both had come from different relationships and had daft little things on the credit file. Yeah. And they couldn't buy. You know, and they were stereotypical. Yeah. Homeowners, 25-year mortgage, blah blah blah. And that was another big shift. Whereas now, it's quite sad in one way, because we talk to a lot of the younger couples, or even just anybody, and they don't even have that thought of buying a house.
Yeah.
It's this generation rent where, well, that's just what you do now. And the shift's been like monumental.
So that's you're leading me on to a good question there, actually, because one of the main questions I get is one of the reasons people don't want to get into property is they're scared about the buying a property and not being able to rent it out. And what's the actual rental demand like at the moment?
At the moment, the rental market has never ever been stronger. The issue for us, as well as the rest of the agents in this area and probably right across the country, it's the supply just isn't there. I mean, we're putting properties on the market now. A nice property, your traditional family home, you've got 10, 15 phone calls straight away. We're pretty much we're having to shut things down at the moment.
Is that all houses, 2, 3s, 4s? What's the main?
Right. The main one is always your 3-bedroom family home.
Yeah.
Family home with a garden.
Yeah.
The demand for them is just astronomical. But anything nice in a nice area. But it is creating issues in the sense that there's some tenants that are pretty much locked into the property they're in.
Right.
We're seeing a big shift from, not that long ago, maybe 2 years ago, if a tenant didn't like where they were, there was a reasonable supply of properties.
Yeah.
And they could go and choose them. Whereas now, rightly or wrongly, when somebody comes to apply for a property, if they have a history of arrears, bad debt, not necessarily behaving the way they should, not necessarily looking after the property, they're not even getting over the line. And I mean, if I could give tenants advice at the moment, it would be, treat that tenancy with respect. Yeah. Because you won't be able just to bounce from property to property anymore. Those days are gone. We put one on in Stokesley, and it was a nice enough little property, and obviously we pushed the button live on Rightmove, and we always have like a little bet in the office. How long is it before the phone rings? Yeah. 6 minutes.
What's that?
And in 2 days we took 18 viewings, and we just had to shut it down.
Yeah.
We just couldn't cope, and we basically handpicked 2 professional people with immaculate history, and that's what I think tenants are now up against, which isn't ideal, because everybody makes mistakes.
Yeah.
You miss a mobile phone bill, so you have a default, you have this, and it's difficult. It's really difficult. But if anybody says they've got property that they can't rent, I'll be gobsmacked, because I just don't know how that could be. Yeah. So what's the advantage of that then? With because I've been like you. 2006 was when I got into property at the worst possible time, June 2006, and I was actually telling some people I was training the other day. Not only did I get a good deal, I actually bought above market value. So I bought on the Parklands. Right. The highest had ever sold for 76 grand, and I paid 86. Yeah. Which I look back now was just crazy behaviour. I was probably, don't get me wrong, it was an end terrace one, and it did have a bit more land, but I massively pushed that ceiling height, and I can see why I bought it, because which will tie into this actually, was when I bought that house, I wanted to get an investment. I had a couple of things in standard life, and I thought, right, I want to get into property, and this was my way of thinking. I can get this property. The mortgage is 450 a month. I can get 400 rent for it, so I'm adding 50 quid in a month. Yeah. So it's 600 quid for the whole year. After 10 years, it's 6 grand. 20 years, it'd be 12 grand. 25 years, I've added in 15 grand. Yeah. So in my head, I'm going, I can put 15 grand into this property, and even if it doesn't go up a penny, it's worth 86 grand. Yeah. There's nowhere am I going to get a return like that. So that was my level of thinking. So I viewed this particular property, and the reason I viewed it was it already had a sitting tenant. And when I went in there, she made us take our shoes off. Even though she was being forced to move out, her landlord was selling it, she still made us take her shoes off, and it just told me a lot about her. And I said, yeah, 100%. Yeah, do you want to stay? And she said, yeah, absolutely, I love it. It's just that he wants to sell.
And I said, well, if I was to buy it, would you stay? And she went, yeah, absolutely. So for me, I took that option because it was like, oh, safe, I've got a tenant at least for a few years, because everyone was saying, my dad and stuff like that were like, if you buy this property and you're abroad in Iraq or Afghanistan in the army and you haven't got a tenant, you're going to deal with this. Who's going to pay for the mortgage and stuff if you haven't got anyone in it? So there was all that fear around it.
Which was probably genuinely true, because
yeah.
It wasn't like they were knocking the door down.
No.
I do look at it the same as you. Look and think, well, for 50 quid a month, if I was going to put 50 quid a month into a savings plan over 25 years, what's the return going to be? It wouldn't be anything like that.
No.
So I get that.
So I bought above market value, and as we both know, 2006. I think was it the end of 26 or 27?
End of 27.
End of 27.
It all started to unfold. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I bought about 4 by then, and then just nicely got it by that. But I teach things now that can protect from that. I just didn't know at the time. So in terms of rental, what can you? I hear the horror stories all the time of people who say, I've got a tenant and they haven't paid, or they've done this, they've trashed my properties. I've never had to take a tenant to court. We've always done well. We've had one or two where there's been a bit of a loss of rent, or they've maybe been a bit dirty. We've never had anyone that's just gone out the way to completely trash somewhere. No, I find you can work with them. So what are landlords doing wrong, and what's the benefit of coming to someone like yourself?
I mean, when I go and see a landlord, and I mean, you know me well enough, Steve, I always say to a landlord, even if for whatever reason, and this is a difficult one to say as a business owner, but if I was talking to you, I'd say, look, Steve, even if you didn't take to me, you didn't think that we were the right agent for you, don't do it yourself. Because, as you know, the legislation in the last, 2 or 3 years has come through thick and fast. I must get a good 10 emails a day from National Landlords Association, from legal people, with all of the things that are going on. And we are the ultimate security for a landlord. And the biggest mistake landlords make, in my opinion, is they do it themselves. Yeah. And unless you're going to eat, sleep and breathe the legislation, the industry, the market, then you are, putting your finger in the wind. Yeah. And the amount of landlords that come to us now to take properties over, first thing I look at, none, it's because there's a problem. The first thing I look at, which is the worst case scenario, is can we evict them? And I would genuinely say a good 95%, we can't, because they haven't given out right to rent, they haven't given out gas safeties, all the things. People think, you just get the gas checked. Yeah. There's about 8 things that we get a tenant to sign for, because we tailor that with an N5 accelerated possession order, because that's ultimately where you're going to end up with the judge. Yeah. And I think, back in the day, again, it was pretty straightforward. There was very little regulation. You stuck somebody in, and you got the rent, and if you didn't like them, you evicted them. Yeah. Not necessarily by the book. Yeah. Some landlords would do it that way. So at the moment, I just think the legislation, there's been a massive onslaught against the private rental sector. Yeah. And it is a bit of a ticking time bomb, because we are rapidly running out of properties. Like say if you go to go to the office, we've got very, very little on the books, and we still get quite a bit of new business, but nowhere near the demand that's out there. Yeah,
and I believe that from me and my profession of obviously building background, is there's a house shortage of 300,000 houses per year, and that's increasing. It was only a couple of years ago, it was 240,000 a year. It's now 300. It's likely to jump up again, because there's hardly been any builds going on while COVID's happened. All the materials and things like that have slowed everything down. They've certainly slowed us down, and that's only going to put a bigger squeeze on the market and the demand, in my eyes.
Well, the other thing that struck me about 2 years ago, we helped one of our landlords with some planning issues, and they were trying to build 8 bungalows in this area, and it got rejected, and we couldn't understand why. And when we went to appeal, one of the things we put forward was a report from Age Concern. Because as you know, there's very few bungalows get built.
Yeah.
And his concern, one of the articles that we put in front of the planning officer, it was headline ticking time bomb. And his concern had put this report, this story out to say that within 5 years, they reckon there's going to be a shortage of 3-point-something million bungalows.
Right.
And when you read into it, you think, well, how can there be a shortage of bungalows? And what they were saying was the housing market has a massive impact on the care market.
Yeah.
And what they were saying again, back in the day, you'd have your house, you get a bit older, you lose a bit of mobility, you drop down into a bungalow, and then you either go into care or you pass away. And what they were saying is because there's such a shortage of bungalows, the care system is getting overloaded because people are going straight from a house directly into the care system. So it's not just your stereotypical 3-bedroom houses for families.
Yeah.
I think it's right across the board.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know of any bungalows being built in the area.
No, it's a good point. And actually, I was talking about this as well the other day, that my model for a lot of years when I was flipping properties was flipping bungalows, because most people live in bungalows are old people. Decoration usually is the nice old-fashioned decor. So I used to target bungalows, renovate them, put them on the market, and they just sell straight away because there was no competition for a really nicely well done bungalow. And there would literally, the quickest one was an estate agent coming round and literally saying, I know wants to take this straight away, and can you wait here? They came round and they made me an offer there and then, like literally just, which is one of the questions actually I want to lead into, because I'm seeing at the moment, you're seeing a shift in your industry. I'm seeing a shift in my industry where people are being trained to cut out you guys and to go direct to vendor. Now, I see the benefit in that. I understand of putting leaflets out and doing things like that you can create a sale, you're not in competition. I get the benefits of that, absolutely. But for me, why would you cut out? Most of my deals, most of my success has been from building relationships with guys like yourself. Absolutely.
Same for us.
Yeah.
Same for us. I mean, it's always gone on where if you put your house on the market with Parker Stag and somebody comes to have a viewing, you could have a discussion and agree between yourselves to cut the agent out. That's always happened. It's a bit naughty in my opinion, obviously from my side, because we've done all the work, we've introduced you, you've cut us out. But what I would say is if you then have any plans to do something with that property, you've alienated that particular agent. Yeah. Because if that was the scenario and then you came and said, oh, I've bought this house, will you rent it for me? Or the answer would be no. No. Because you've built that relationship. Morally, that's wrong, and my own principles wouldn't let me do that. Yeah. But I think people leaflet dropping things like that. Why would you do it? Because it's just such a slow burner. Whereas everything now is digital, everything is Rightmove, it's Zoopla, it's all of these platforms, Facebook, all the social media, and you're hitting thousands of people straight away. Well,
my take on this is, I always try to put myself in the shoes of somebody else. So tell me if you think this is wrong, but this is how I see it. So somebody comes to you, they want to sell their house. Yeah. So in my head, I'm thinking, right, if I'm wanting to sell my house, I want to sell my house as quickly as I can with as least hassle as I possibly can. I then put myself in your shoes and go, you want somebody to approach you who's easy to work with. Yep. You want to find a developer or a buyer, and again, you want to be able to sell that house quickly as you can with as least possible hassle.
Exactly.
So this thing of developers, landlords having a battle with the estate agents, I don't get it, because if you're seller, so somebody who comes to you, the vendor comes to you, they want to sell, and as I said, they want to sell as quickly as they can, because they've obviously made the decision to sell, the fact that they've come at you and go, can you put my house on the market? So they want to sell as quickly as they can with at least hassle. So if you rang me on that day, you went out to look at that property and went, actually, I know a guy who will take this straight away. Yeah. You ring me and I say, yeah, I'll come out and have a look at it. I buy it. it's a win-win-win for all three of us. They've sold straight away. You've just made a sale dead quickly. I've just got a property that I'm looking for. So I don't understand why landlords would look at it and think to try to go. I get the benefit to direct to vendor, but to overlook relationships with estate agents for me is just crazy.
That is the key, and it can come down very simply to penny pinching.
Yeah.
You have a discussion with the person that's now viewing your property, and you think you can sell that property without paying our fees. Well, that's fine. That's all well and good, but it's a very, very short-term view.
Yeah, it is.
If you've got no intention of dealing with us in the future, then it's a chance you take. But you know yourself with the conveyancing now, everything is much more complicated.
Yeah.
Everything is slowed down massively, and we can any agent should be dealing with a lot of the issues for you. We've got one over at Stockton now, believe it or not, and it's a good pal of mine, and somehow a piece of his garden has disappeared. We've got 2 land registry plans. And he said, what the hell do I do with this? I'm like, don't worry about it, we'll deal with it. What he would have done on his own is beyond me.
Yeah.
He would have probably just thrown the towel in and left the house on the market.
Yeah, but this what you mentioned there regarding it being short-sighted, like one of the biggest things that I can't stress enough in any game, in business, anything like that, is I always play the long-term game. If you take that short-term win and somebody undercuts you that way, you only do that 2 or 3 times and you've burned all the estate agents in a town. And it doesn't take long for you guys to speak. Like people think that you don't communicate and stuff as well.
We have a good relationship in the town. More so with the lockdown, we all were ringing each other. What you're doing about opening, how you're dealing with your viewings, and it's probably pulled us all, together. Not that we were apart, but we just sort of all were, dealing with our own business. But it's the same with landlords. Is another one where you talk about relationships, and it's how many landlords actually sit. I know you do, and I also encourage somebody to say, okay, well, what are you buying? And if it looks cheap, there's a reason for it. So let's explore that. But what's your end game with this? Because it's all right buying something cheap now that you might have a ridiculously high turnover of tenants, and then suddenly find that you're stuck with this white elephant. Yeah. And ultimately, I get people, more so friends, will ring me saying, I've just seen this in a certain area, and I'm like, all you're picking up is council tax. Yeah. And worry and insurance. And bonfire nights come in, and the frosts come in, and all these things. And what we try and do with our potential landlords, and I know we've dealt with some of your guys, and I always look and say, right, that's what I think you should be paying. Yeah. That's what you should be getting in rent. That's the strength of the rental market, and that's your exit route. Yeah. And that's, if you can top and tail the whole process, so you think, well, okay, we're going to have a good return, and we're never going to really be worried about selling the property or continuing to rent it. That's really where people need to be. But that's where the relationship comes in. I regularly do reports for landlords. Some of them send me a property with another agent. I've just seen this. What do you think? And I'll send them a report from Rightmove, because again, based on relationships, the one thing I don't want is for you to come to me, somebody like yourself, Steve, and say, oh, there you go, Martin, I've just bought this property, will you rent it out? And I'm like, oh, Steve, what have you done? Yeah. Not that you would, but you know what I mean? That type of situation. Because I want to be saying to you, well, I want to be comfortable that you're giving me a product that I can maximise for you. And that's the key. Funny enough, you talked about bungalows earlier, though. On the rental side, we've got landlords that just buy bungalows. Yeah. And why is that then? Well, for exactly the reasons you said. We tend to get a more older client for the bungalows. They tend to be a lot more settled, and we don't have a turnover of tenants. Yeah. And it's all about understanding your market and understanding the people that are in your market. No, solicitors is another one. You've got to have good relationships with the local solicitors. Yeah. Because when you need a favour, when something looks like it's going a bit wobbly, you want them to pull all the stops out. But if we're dealing with one solicitor and we give them one case a year, why would they give us any priority? Yeah. It's the same thing, isn't it? Absolutely. Which is why we stopped doing tenant find only. Right. Because, and again, this is just us being very honest, and I would tell anybody this. tenant find only, our legal people aren't keen on that because it's like, where does our responsibility start and end?
Right.
But being honest with a landlord, you come to me with a fully managed property, somebody comes to me and they just want to find a tenant, I get a tenant, 2 tenants that would suit both of you. Who's going to get the best tenant?
Yeah.
I'm not going to put the best tenant in a property that I'm never going to see again.
Yeah.
And have a weaker tenant.
No, I get it. Yeah.
And it's just trying to, it's just trying to be fair to people.
Yeah.
But be upfront about it.
And I think this is what landlords probably they probably fail to see some of this stuff. So I'm going to ask you a direct question now. What pisses you off with landlords? What don't you like? So we come to you. We obviously, people like myself, we want to be able to buy property below market value. It's part of the investment strategy. What don't you like and what do you like?
It's difficult with your people because they are, and this isn't me blowing smoke up your ass, it's because they have a very good understanding.
Yeah.
The difficulties for us are the landlords that come and they've done absolutely no homework.
Yeah.
It's a standing joke in the office, and I'm sure it's a standing joke in all of the offices, where people will walk through the door and they'll say, what I'm looking for, come across yesterday, what I'm looking for a house that's cheap. I could spend 5,000 on it and then maybe sell it and make about 30.
Yeah.
And you honestly feel like saying, what a cracking idea, why has nobody else ever thought of this?
Yeah.
And so how are you going to fund it? Well, I don't know. Well, have you got a mortgage in place? Well, I don't know. Have you got a deposit? Well, how much would I need?
Yeah.
And that frustrates you because you can waste a hell of a lot of time.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily their fault.
Yeah.
They're just latching on to something that is a big thing at the moment.
Yeah.
But they're not doing the homework. The guy, and we've dealt with quite a few of your guys, as you know, they come and they've got all the ducks in line.
Yeah.
And for us as an agent, more so with the lockdowns and the nonsense we've had this year, we haven't really got the time to be wasting because somebody hasn't done their own homework.
No,
if your guys come in, it's a case of, right, there you go, that's the property, that's the price, that's the rent, are you buying it?
Yeah.
So it's really just the lack of knowledge is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
Or lack of preparation.
Hi guys, hope you're enjoying this video. Make sure that you like, share and subscribe to the channel. In the description below you can book a strategy call with one of my coaches. You can download the book, enjoy the rest of the video. Yeah, and I think that's as a whole. I look back at my strategies from years ago and I'm one of the ones that I'm self-taught, which I wouldn't recommend as much as I've got to where I am. The years and years of mistakes I made, it's so much quicker to just get trained because I think it's Jim Rohn that says, if you think education's expensive, try the price for ignorance. Yeah. It's just crazy. So if a landlord's coming into you, an investor, and they're looking to buy property below market value, what's the sort of approach? What do you want to see? Because like I say, we all want to try and get property as cheap as we possibly can. And you've got people on your books that are happy to sell cheap, because I've been that person. I've been on the other end where I've got into cash flow. And that Parklands one I bought, I actually bought it off you guys. I just remembered. So it must have had a good someone good in the team there. I sold that for 76 grand. About 4 years later, because my model was I was putting money out on all of these different properties. I came out of the army, dropped that income, and then the market was unsettled. I couldn't flip properties as quick, I couldn't make as much profit, and all of a sudden I found myself in a bit of a difficult time. I had to sell that property for 76 grand, so I bought it for 86, sold it for 76. That's not good business.
No. But you learn from it, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely.
You learn from it, don't you?
But I was happy to sell that property below market value as quick as I possibly could, because the repercussions of not selling that at that 10 grand loss was repossession and bad credit for 5 or 6 years. So I weighed that up and went, I'm happy to make that loss there in order to get 15, 20 grand out of this property that is going to ride me a bit of cash flow. So I know fine well, because I've been in that, and you said you've been there yourself.
Yeah,
So you've sold some at below market value as well.
I mean, we were buying again pre-credit crunch. And that was, people call it the good old days, but it's probably why the credit crunch come out a big fact. You could buy a property on the morning, and you'd have the remortgage go through on the afternoon.
Yeah.
So not only would you get your money back, you'd have a deposit for the next one.
Yeah.
We were buying houses on credit cards, and you just look back and think, well, no wonder things went spectacularly wrong. But when it comes down to the below market value, I always ask probably more questions than people are expecting. So I come to value your house.
Yeah.
My job is to get you the best price I can for your house.
Yeah.
And there's no grey areas with us.
Yeah.
But in the conversation, and I've had quite a few of these in the last 6 weeks, because I think people are maybe seeing what may be coming.
Yeah.
Because this has got a bit of a credit crunch feel all over again for me.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the same for you. So I have a chat with you, and I tell you that your house is worth 150,000. You then tell me, that's fine, yeah, we're not in a rush, blah, blah, so we'll market the property.
Yeah.
But if in the course of that conversation you turn around to me and say, well, I've got a suspended possession order on the property, the bailiffs have already been, I'm petrified of what's going to... My question to you then is, right, Steve, I've told you what it's worth.
Yeah.
What do you need for this property and when to make your life and all these problems go away?
Yeah.
And I was in that position myself, and I needed, well, I took 15 grand under market value, and it sorted out all the problems, and it was probably one of the best things I ever did.
Yeah.
And because ultimately, people seem to think that, oh well, if it gets repossessed, and there's a shortfall, that's it. They will hunt you down now for that balance. Yeah. So it's a twofold thing. That's the price. What's the position? Yeah. Position is great. Everything's great, brilliant. Right, put it in the market and let's see if we can get as close to the asking price as we can. But if you then have that conversation about what you needed to do to put you in a better position for whatever reason, then we would always be saying, well, there's no point putting it on at 150 if the market's saturated with properties, because you're telling me you've literally got 8 weeks. That's where we then need the bank of investors. Yeah. And I renew regularly with properties such as that, because what I need to know is if somebody is going to buy it. Yeah. Because then I've sorted the problem out for the vendor, and the investor's got a good deal. Yeah. Everybody's happy. Yeah. And being brutally honest, if they're going to rent it out, they're probably going to come back to us. Yeah. And that's really the conversation. I think more of them conversations need to happen, but more of them conversations have been happening. Since we've gone into the lockdown, I would say most of the valuations I've done for sale are preemptive valuations. Yeah. And I can honestly see that once we get through Christmas, I think the market is going to be a whole lot different than it is now.
Do you think we're coming for a crash? Do you think there's one coming?
It depends who you listen to. I mean, pre this second lockdown, I was saying the market has to crash. Yeah. For the simple reason that you can only base your opinion on there and now. Yeah. So as we sat then, the CBI had said that once the furlough ends, they've done the research, 800,000 to 1.1 million will lose their jobs. Yeah. That made sense to me. Yeah. Businesses were hopefully thinking, well, we'll get through the furlough and hopefully we're back on track. Yeah. We clearly aren't back on track. Yeah. Now, if that had been the case, the first thing people look at is the finances. Where can we save money? Yeah. And the biggest probably drain on people's income is their mortgage. Yeah. So at that point, I was thinking, that was the case. I spoke to a couple of surveyors, and they were saying they were already valuing with one eye on where this could head. Yeah. Which don't necessarily agree with, because they could then trigger that. Yeah, but absolutely. I understand, they're trying not to get caught out for the bank side. But the moment it's sort of like roll with the punches, isn't it? Every day you put the news on to see what else is going on. I can't see how the market won't take a tumble. Yeah. And we always judge our year back end of January. If we've been really busy in January, we're going to have a good year. If we've done absolutely nothing in terms of sales or instructions, it's like, you know, get your head down. It's going to be be another difficult year. And I think come the end of January, I think that will probably tell us where we're heading.
Right.
But if you wanted me, you know, a straight yes or no, do I think the market's going to go down? I would say yes. I would say
You
yes.
do, yeah.
Yeah. What do you think? Just out of curiosity.
I'm kind of on the fence with this, and I'll tell you why. Because, like, I look at things like the millennium bug, and it was made to be this thing where the whole of the world's going to shut down. Nothing at all happened.
No.
We look at Brexit, and people went, if we vote for Brexit, there's going to be a massive tumble. Didn't. They went up. The pound went up. There was this thing with furlough that this is going to absolutely destroy the market. It's going to plummet. Property's gone up right now.
Yeah.
So there's what we think will happen often doesn't happen is what I've found.
It's
so
the fear of what might happen is normally worse than it does, isn't it?
Absolutely. So to ask me where I think it'll go, I do think that there is scope. I'm probably more leaning towards the side of I do think there is going to be a drop.
Yeah.
I don't see it being massive.
No, I wouldn't use the word crash.
Yeah.
Because I think a crash on here is a little, it's a ripple, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, when you're in the big areas, the city of London, their crashes are quite spectacular.
Yeah.
But for me, I just think you've just got to see how it all unfolds.
Yeah.
It depends what support's out there. Do they really want a house market crash?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if it went either way. So if it didn't crash at all and it went up, it wouldn't surprise me at all now. It wouldn't surprise me if we did have one. I guess I've just stopped trying to guess now, and I just see what happens, and by putting certain strategies in place, you can protect yourself against it.
Yeah, but again, those things, you know, it's like when I was an IFA, one of the best training courses I ever went to was it was just all about realism and, you know, take things for what they are. And the guy, he was just basically talking about shares. And he used Rolls Royce as an example. No reason, just picked Rolls Royce out. And he said, everybody in the room, you've just spent £5,000 on Rolls Royce shares and they're £1 each. So you've all got 5,000 shares.
Yeah.
So the Rolls Royce shares absolutely crash. What do you all do? And a few were saying, we'll just try and get as much money back as we can. And probably the smart ones were like, just leave them in the drawer then.
Yeah.
Just leave them in the drawer. But he also then went on to say, and it's all about exit and about strategy, as you said. You know, if he just turned around and said, well, that's enough, so I got that wrong. The shares have doubled.
Yeah.
Now what do you do? Oh, then all of a sudden all the hands went up. Yeah, we'll sell them now.
Yeah.
And he likened it to property, to various things. And he said, it's like getting in a lift. You're on the 12th floor and you want to go to the 18th floor, but somebody's already pressed the button for number 2. Yeah. So the lift goes down. He said, do you get out and walk up the stairs?
Yeah.
No, you don't. You wait till it goes back up to the 18th floor.
Yeah.
And it was all about just taking things, just trying to get a bit of balance on things.
Yeah.
You know, and ultimately, the price. If let's say the market did crash, the sales market crashes, the people that will suffer are the people that can't afford to pay the mortgage.
Yeah.
Irrespective of what the prices were, anyway.
Yeah.
They're going to suffer.
Yeah.
But you know, anybody that's luckily still working, they've still got their incomes and things, it's just another case of, well, put it to one side and wait till, because it never means house prices never mean anything to me personally, unless I'm buying or selling. Yeah. You know, where I live now, I'm settled, so you know, if you suddenly say, man, you know, your house is halved in value, so what? Yeah. You know, thankfully I can pay the mortgage. I like where we live. I'll worry about it then in 10 years. Yeah. You know?
And this is what I say to the people that I train is, if my portfolio dropped, if it slashed and went from 6 million down to 500 grand, it wouldn't affect me at all because my cash flow is still there. And my model is to hold and create cash flow, which is what I teach people is, don't get caught out like I did at the start, because when you're the person adding 50 into all these different mortgages, and there's then a crash or a boiler breaks, it's coming out of your pocket. But when you've got the cash flow there off each of these and you're making 200, you can then pay for a boiler, you can ride things out of your cash flow, and the correct strategy can protect you completely. And because I aim to buy 25% below market value, I don't see that if there is a crash, it's not going to drop as much as 25%. So I've given myself that buffer. I'm not instantly going into negative equity because of the way that I buy.
Let's be honest though, if you're heavily into property, then a crash isn't a bad thing for you, is it?
No,
because
you scoop it up at the other end.
You rebalance your portfolio, and it's the same as a stock market crash. And if you're sat on billions of pounds in your bank and you happen to be the Sultan of Brunei or somebody who's got a serious wealth, and the market crashes, I would imagine what they do is they pile in.
Yeah.
Because it does get a good bounce
quite
quickly.
Yeah.
Whether they trigger the crash, I don't know. But
yeah.
there is that argument with property, isn't there?
No, absolutely. I think it's just about which side of the fence you're on, because even though, like you said, and I agree, that there's going to be a lot of redundancies because of furlough ending and things like that, I still don't see that as a negative thing. It's negative for the people that get made redundant, and I feel for them people. Yeah. But why those businesses and things are going bust, there's somebody else's business over here growing who's now employing people. Massively. So all I think it does is it does that. It starts to shift. It doesn't necessarily take something away. No. It just shifts it it moves it to another area.
If we just had one of the plumbers has just been in today just to collect some keys, and I said to him, "Are you the same as everybody else?" He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Are you busy?" He said, "We've never been busier." And I said to him, "We've got a bathroom to fit," and he went, "It's going to be April." And I said, "Really?" He said, and kitchen fitters are the same, because there's a lot of money that's stayed in the country. The holidays that didn't happen. So there's a lot of businesses that are prospering. We've done really well, out of this. I guess we are very, very blessed to be in an industry where it's nice to go for a pint, isn't it? It's nice to go for a pint and a bite to eat, but you don't need to do that because you can do that at home. Whereas we're in an industry where people need somewhere to live. They always will, they always have. So our industry has ridden through this. We've done well with the rents. People, the first thing we thought was, nobody's going to pay the rent. And we've come out pretty unscathed. Yeah. But there's some businesses that are absolutely smashing it. And you can see people are taking other people on. Yeah. But it's just that person that's selling. The ones I feel sorry for is the ones that are selling and they're not going back into the market. Yeah. Because if they sell, the ones that are buying, the ones that are selling now, and I'm sort of saying to people, if you're selling and you're not reinvested, so it's like you've inherited a property. Yeah. Now's probably a great time to sell. Yeah. Because the market's never been stronger. Yeah. If the market did take a big tumble and somebody was selling and then going into rented for whatever reason, then they are going to get kicked. They're going to get kicked quite hard. But again, it's back to that, can we second guess the market? Well, no. So how long in total then, from doing the mortgages first, have you been involved around property as a whole, did you say? I bought, probably similar to yourself, I bought my first one over in Broughton. It was a school friend of mine, needed somewhere to live, and the houses were cheap. I bought a little street house, and I quickly worked out that she was sort of buying the house for me. And then from there, somebody else said, would you do the same for me? So I did the same. So you're probably going back to, probably about 25 years. 25 years. Something like that, yeah. And
what has the market done in that? What was the sort of prices you were buying at then compared to what they are now?
My first house I bought in Foster Street in Broughton, 3-bedroom, mid-terrace. I think I paid about 23.
23 grand.
Yeah. And they're probably now 65, 70. Yeah. But like I say, we were buying houses on credit cards, and then on the afternoon, just pulling all your money back in the deposit. Yeah. It was
good days. I wish they were still around.
Yeah, but you know what though, Steve?
It created a lot of problems.
It did, and I'm not saying I'm any super intellect. Because you know me, so you know that's not true. But I remember when I was doing the mortgages, and obviously do a lot of mortgages for friends. And I remember seeing a pattern started to emerge where, let's say I came to see you, and you've got an £80,000 mortgage and you've got £110,000 house, and you've racked up all your credit cards, because money was free and easy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You know, people didn't
Too
seem
easy.
to have to worry.
Too easy, yeah.
It was like, say, you know, you could go and get 25 grand on a credit card without really any issues. And I started to see a pattern where I've come to see yourself. And I said, so what else have you got, Steve? Oh, I've got 17 grand on credit cards. Oh, don't worry, because your house is now worth 130.
Yeah.
So all we'll do, we'll wrap all that up. So everything you're paying now is going to be a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
And then 2 years later, see you, and the same thing's happened. And you look back and think, did we ever think that house prices were ever going to stop just going up and up and up?
Yeah.
Because I probably didn't at the time. And then all of a sudden you get to that day where they stop. And I remember my mate saying, well, what do I do with all that other debt?
Yeah.
Well, there's now what you can do, other than basically pay it.
Yeah.
And that was around about 2007, it all started
yeah.
to come on top.
Yeah.
But we just built our house. We literally, the day before the Northern Rock story broke, we dug the first scoop out for the footings. That was the day before the Northern Rock broke.
What was
So not only did we have the estate agency going through the mortgage market, I mean, we had 13 mortgages on the spin declined straight after the credit crunch. And one of them was because the bank didn't like a Part X. It was basically just, we're saying no. You'd have seen this.
Yeah.
They would just say no for the sake of saying no. It didn't matter who you were. You know, it was just a no.
Yeah.
But the journey's it's probably not going to change in property. It's going to have its good days, it's going to have its bad days. But I think now people are starting just to be a little bit more careful about where it's heading. You know, interest only mortgages, 125% mortgages on interest only.
Yeah.
Remember them?
Crazy.
Rock?
I wasn't fortunate enough, but
that's, you know, they were lending you 125% of the price of the house at
yeah,
top
one of my
end
mates
value.
got one, yeah.
On interest only.
Yeah.
Self-certification.
Crazy.
Just a very quick one. When I think it was Accord Mortgages, I was sat on my desk, this is going back to 2000. No, it'd been about 2000, I'm trying to think how old the kids are. It'd been about 2005. And I got an email through from the account manager. And we had about 30 mortgage advisors. And it came up, day one, self-certified, 85% mortgage and remortgage. Day one, self-certified. Did you ever come across that?
No. I think I've heard of them, yeah, but I don't know if I actually.
I rang the guy and he went, I know what you're ringing for. And I went, what? He went, yeah. He said, I can't get my head around it either. I said, am I reading this right? I said, so let me give you a hypothetical case. I said, I've got a guy there that's just inherited a house for 200,000. Never worked.
Yeah.
No income as such. But he wants to pull out 85% of the 200,000.
Yeah.
He said, yeah, that fits so far. I said, but day one self-certified. He said, what does he do for a living? So we didn't do anything. He said, well, but he needs to be self-certified from day one. I said, what, so he needs to do something now? So I said, well, he's going to do it yourself brain surgery. He reckons there's a real market for it. He's going to put and he went, yeah, send the application in.
Yeah.
I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And he was like, no, mate, send the application in, and it would go through.
Yeah.
And I remember speaking to the other director saying, wow, somewhere's got to give.
Yeah.
And of course, it did, you know.
Accord Mortgages, I've got one of those, and they're still about, yeah.
They've all been swallowed up, but that's another issue. I don't know if you've seen that, where a lot of the lenders, Capital Home Loans is one. They're no longer lending; they're closed to new business. So I've got a couple myself that I'm just in the process of tidying up, where the interest only date is coming up,
right?
And they say, no, we want our money.
Right.
There's no, you know, so you either have to find another lender that will take it,
yeah, or
you've somehow got to find the money. So that's another bit of an issue that we're seeing with some of the landlords as well. Okay,
I'm going to ask you a question, quite a tricky one this. What do landlords not know that you know that they should know?
Everything.
Go on then.
No, I think in one word, it would be regulation. Regulation. I would say regulation in a way of protecting them. Yeah. There's that many different things. You know, we asked landlords, do you know what the Right to Rent Act is? Do you know what the Deregulation Act is? Yeah. Do you know what the changes this year regarding the electrical standards? Yeah. and the amount of landlords that don't know. And that's not a criticism, you know,
Yeah.
because if I wanted to go into a different field, you know, as a bricklayer, and just had a basic understanding, I wouldn't expect to build a house.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing, and that's why I always say to landlords, even if you don't take to us, go and find what you believe to be a good agent.
Yeah.
Because we're your ultimate safety net. We must, I mean, you know all the team in the office, we must at least 3 or 4 times a day ring the legal people.
Yeah.
On crazy things. You know, I thought just some really daft ones. If there's a TV in the property, so if you as a landlord leave the tenants a TV because they want one for the kid's bedroom,
Yeah.
you have to provide a TV license.
Yeah.
Not the tenants.
Right.
You have to do that because
Yeah.
it's your TV. There's all sorts of
Yeah.
crazy things that you think, "Oh, I'm sure this is the answer," and then you get a totally different answer.
Yeah.
And the big one is you know, whenever we set a tenancy up, and this isn't in a negative way.
Yeah.
If it was posh and Becks,
Yeah.
and they're coming to rent off us, we, for our own protection and the landlord's protection, we assume they're not going to pay the rent, they're going to misbehave, and they're going to trash it.
Yeah.
That's how we believe that tenancy is going to run, and you don't get any surprises.
Yeah.
You don't think, oh, I can't believe he's done that, or she's done that, I can't believe it, because you were prepared for it.
Yeah.
So we talk to landlords about rent guarantee insurance, we talk to them about malicious tenant damage cover. Yes, you shouldn't need any of this, but good people turn bad.
Yeah.
Circumstances, situations, you know, and you can have cracking tenants and it suddenly starts to take a slide. But the other thing I think that they're probably not aware of is the change in the benefits. You know, I know universal credits had a real kick in.
Yeah.
And yes, they can be difficult to get hold of and to deal with, but there's a lot of real positives in there.
Yeah.
You know, you can elect now, you get the rent, if they're 8 weeks in arrears, as always, you can get the universal credit sent direct to you. So you're drawing a line in arrears.
Yeah.
But what you can now do is you can now apply for the arrears to be deducted from the rest of the benefits.
Right.
So back in the day where you sort of say, well, I've got the rent coming over, but there's still, you know, the £1,500 hole in the account, you can eat into that £1,500. So there's things like that they're probably not aware of.
Yeah.
That we are, you know, and again, going back to what you said earlier, Steve, you bang on relationships.
Yeah.
We've got a relationship with Universal Credit. I make a point of a relationship with the antisocial behaviour team. You want to know straight away if you've got somebody in a property that's causing problems.
Yeah.
But we also want to know if there's somebody in an area where we've got tenants,
Yeah.
where somebody else is causing problems. You know, working with the local authorities, we work with the Syrian refugee scheme. There's lots of things out there that landlords won't have access to because through an agent, you know. But I think that's it. I think it's just the regulation, knowing how to put things right, you know. Not sort of just thinking, well, that's how it is, we have to accept it, because it's not.
Yeah. I've loved that, mate. Absolute brilliant. What hour long are we on there? Dino, give us a shout. For anybody who's watching in now, and obviously it's the first time that they've come across you, you're obviously in the Redcar based, which is in Cleveland, not too far from Middlesbrough, for people who are maybe watching from down south or Scotland. Where can people find you? What do you do? Tell us a little bit about, in terms of, if someone now is wanting to think, hey, that guy seems a good guy, I'd like to connect with him in terms of maybe he's buying deals off you or getting you to rent the properties. Where can they find you?
In fact, find us parkerstag.com. We're on Facebook, obviously Parker Stag. I'm Martin Shutt, S-H-U-T-T, so you can connect with me there. Mention you guys, you know, because again, we know that people that are coming through you, we know that they've got the right skills, they've got the right knowledge, so we know that we can deal with them that way. I mean, we've just won the British Property Award for our lettings department for the 3rd year running, which has never ever happened. And although, you know, we still class ourselves as a small independent, and I guess a family business, but that's never happened before. And that's, you know, we are dead proud of that, because that's 26 categories that we scored over. And it's not something you apply for, it's not something you get nominated for, it's something the industry does.
Yeah.
It's all mystery shopped, and a lot of you know, what we got real credit for was, forgive my French, the no bullshit approach.
Yeah.
Just telling it as it is.
Yeah.
But we make it quite clear that we represent the landlord.
Yeah.
We represent the vendor. We want good relationships with tenants. Of course you do. You want a good relationship with the buyers. But ultimately, you know, we don't cross that line.
Yeah.
But yeah, and we're no different to anybody, Steve. We are desperate for property. Absolutely desperate. And, you know, long may it continue, to be fair.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Good. Thanks, guys. I hope you've enjoyed that. You've got loads of good nuggets from that. I certainly did. Picked up a few extra things from that which I didn't know. So make sure you like, share and subscribe to the channel. Thanks, guys.